My name is Bill Dinger. I am a solutions architect with VMO Y&R. We're going to talk about continuous security, integrating security into your DevOps pipeline. Right there at the bottom, hopefully you all can see that. That is the GitHub repo, which I just updated about 20 seconds ago, well, a little bit before that, which has all the code and demo, and as well as these slides to this, if you want to pull it. Don't follow me on Twitter unless you want to hear miscellaneous rage about the Royals or other such nonsense. So first off, why do we got to care about this? Can you actually see that? Yeah, I guess you can. So here's why we're going to care about security. Security ruins customers' trust in you and what you're selling, right? So this up here is a rugged manifesto, which is a kind of DevOps principle stuff. The whole point is that we have a somewhat ethical obligation to our customers or our consumers to produce produce software that doesn't have security lapses, right? There's a whole lot of problems that come when your code gets in your websites get exploited. And for the most part, the industry, even to this day, kind of pays lip service to security. I mean, out of curiosity, how many folks are actively running security scans or any of that type of stuff on their current websites right now? I think that's actually reasonably good, by the way. When I usually do this talk...
Not me, but other people.
Right. Your organization, whatever, right? When I usually give this talk, it's like 10-20% of the room, typically. And... when I go to customer sites, it's maybe a quarter. Or they'll sit, my favorite, a lot of my work happens to be for a big telecom company in the Kansas City area. And, they say we run security scans, all the rest. You dig into it, and it's like a guy or a girl, and they're running like an ancient version of something against like a website they're not even using anymore because we deprecated it 17 years ago. Anyway, so let's make it easier, right? And part of the thing is, in history and typically, security is always used as really hard and expensive. It can be, obviously, but the whole point of this talk is to show you, everything I'm going to show you here is free. And all of this have done on production sites over and over and over again. It takes me between 4 and 12 hours to set up. So, pretty easy. So let's talk about what we're going to do. So how to make it easy. So, and another reason to do this, we're going to shift left. You guys hopefully some of you have heard this before. We're going to move security testing further into the cycle, into our pipeline, right? We want to run all of our scans as quick as possible. We want to run them in our QA environments, in our dev environments. We want to run them locally if at all possible. The reason for this is the quicker we find security, the easier it is to fix, right? These statistics and quotes come from the book Accelerate. Has anybody read Accelerate? Yeah. I highly encourage you to. It's more of a DevOps book if you're into DevOps. But Accelerate is a bunch of scientific research. The researchers Nicole Ferguson, Jez Himmelin, and Gene Kim did research on what metrics led to improvements in 4 key areas, and they did across industry silos, small, large organizations, all across. There are 4 metrics, by the way, were mean time to recovery, lead time to production, release velocity, and I'm going to forget the 4th one. But long story short, what they found was teams that build security in their work do better continuous delivery. They found high performers were spending 50% less time remediating security issues than low performers. So as part of this stuff, they've found for whatever reason that when you integrate security tools into your DevOps pipelines, you almost statistically significantly do better at DevOps just as a whole. The thought behind the research, although they didn't say, was that typically organizations that implement these security tools in their pipelines are probably more mature in their DevOps practices. It tends to be one of the last things people end up doing, to be frank. Like, a lot of times the first thing you do is, does my stuff build? And then you start worrying, does it deploy right? And you start worrying about other stuff. But so if you look at like an idealized CI/CD graph, right? We're talking about, you can see, start at the left, all the way from frequent hooks, you build, IAC, unit test, static code analysis. What we're really talking about here is integrating up here at the top, right? So we're just going to throw security into our pipelines with like anything else, with our unit tests, with maybe our automated QA, with SONARQUBE rules, all the rest. We're just going to toss it into our normal build pipelines. Nothing really special about it. All right. And just like anything else in your CI/CD pipelines, we would fail builds, right? So part of this, I'll show these tools when we integrate into stuff like Jenkins and stuff. The whole point is you'll start failing builds if your tooling returns, problems. Couple assumptions. And one off the slide. So all these tools work with these technologies. A lot of stuff I'm going to demo is Jenkins related, and obviously Drupal and PHP. But we'll also show you some stuff. The tooling I show works with Java, works with .NET, works with JavaScript. A lot of this stuff will work with Bitbucket and GitHub as well. And like I said, most of the demo stuff is running on Docker, although you obviously don't have to use Docker. So, first off, what is OWASP, right? So OWASP was formed in 2003 after a spate of terrible security incidents on the web. It's a good thing we don't have those anymore. It was formed because a bunch of security researchers wanted to give a set of tools and procedures and stuff to help improve web security. 2001, sorry. It provides a whole bunch of resources beyond what we'll talk about here, including I would highly encourage if you're not familiar with like the OWASP Top 10, which is a list of like the top 10 security vulnerabilities in the web today, right? That includes stuff like, again, the typical number one for like 15 straight years is like SQL injection attacks, right? Those type of stuff. But also includes a cheat sheet series, which I would highly recommend if you ever need to do. If somebody ever asks you how do I store a password securely, like OWASP has a cheat sheet. Just tells you do exactly these things. Or how do I manage sessions securely? Do exactly these things. Anyway, it's free. It's open source. OWASP has very strict rules about vendor. It's not dominating one company. They have very strict rules about vendors supporting it and how people who donate their time to the project are allowed to represent their vendors. Like a lot of cases, you can't even. If I work on like an OWASP thing, or I can't use like my VMLYR email address, right? Like they have extremely strict rules, so it's not really. Anyway, the whole point is supposed to be like agnostic. All right, so let's talk. Here is the stuff we're going to talk about today. Talk about dependency check. That monitor is really terrible. Dependency check, Z attack proxy, open web testing framework, web testing environments, SONARQUBE rules, and a teeny bit about some documentation. All right, teeny bit. First off, let us talk about dependency check. All right, so what is dependency check? So this is, we talked about the top 10. I mentioned a little bit before, the top 10 number vulnerabilities in the web today. This protects you against the number 9 of those top 10, which is using components with known security vulnerabilities. So we're going to talk specifically since Drupal conference about like Composer, and as well as probably NPM. So the problem you have is oftentimes, and this is probably especially problematic for stuff like JavaScript. I'll do an NPM install or a Composer require something, right? And it pulls in 55 dependencies. Well, you have no way of knowing if those dependencies have security vulnerabilities, and nothing really checks it. Matter of fact, when I do an NPM install of something, it might pull in, and there's packages that do this, over 5,000 dependencies. The only way to otherwise is to individually go through each one of those versions and check, has there been a security vulnerability released for this? And who's doing that checking, right? This problem is pretty widespread and is often used as a side attack vector to get access to your application, right? So how does this work? How does it help us? So it scans your dependencies, again, using your Composer lock file, your NPM registry. If you're using Maven, it uses your POM, whatever. And it compares it against the National Institutes of Standards and Technology's National Vulnerability Database. National Vulnerability Database, it's a thing hosted by the federal government. It just has a gigantic list of every common CVE, which is like the security warning, and like what thing it affects. It supports a whole bunch of stuff, suppression lists, like maybe you have a vulnerability, you can't fix it because you can't upgrade, something like that. Report generation, failure depending on severity, etc. Couple quick things. Again, Java and .NET are the 2 officially supported ones. With that said, there are experimental analyzers that most of us in this room care about for PHP, Composer specifically, as well as Python, Node, C and C++, although with NPM there's another better tool I'll show you here in a second. And as far as the implementations, there's a command line, which I'll show you guys today because it's the only thing that really works for Composer. Nobody's really made a Jenkins plugin for it. But there is a Jenkins plugin as well for if you're using PHP or if you're using Maven or .NET. It supports, there's Gradle and Maven and all sorts of stuff, plugins. All right, so here's what it looks like in like a Maven project, right? I'll probably skip over this real quick again, just a little bit. So it's pretty easy to add. Throw some configuration files in there, runs, looks great, right? Let me show you, again, command line. pretty easy. This is showing .NET, runs a scan. But here's the one you guys care about. PHP. So, command line, pass it a whole bunch of command arguments, and it spits out a report. I'm going to show you what the report looks like before I go into the, it doesn't take that long too. Let me go ahead and mirror this guy. Anytime. My poor Windows Lappy is running like 19 Docker images right now. All right. So I'm going to run that report real quick. So I'm pointing this to, I stood up a very, very, very simple compose file. It has like Drupal required. So that's about it. There's hardly anything in the compose. This is going to take a second because it's going to update the NVD. So the first thing this does, it talks out to the NIST NVD again, downloads a database of vulnerabilities, installs them locally. You can configure this for how long. Like I think by default, and I recommend 24 hours. If you're really paranoid, or you can do less. It doesn't take that long, but I couldn't get on the wireless, so I'm on my hotspot right now. So it's actually taking longer than it really would in real production. All right, so I went and downloaded all the updates. It's going to process them, and then it's going to scan the compose, which will only take a second. After it scans the compose, it is going to generate a report. Here's what that report looks like for my incredibly basic, 100% fresh and brand new Drupal. It's found 3 critical vulnerabilities in Twig. I don't know what they are. I actually didn't take a look. So whatever this Twig vulnerability is, will eventually pull up. There can be false positives too, which is possible. But it spits out, here's the dependencies I found. I'll scroll down a little bit. Yeah, so this probably doesn't impact us. Twig before 2.44 allows server-side template injection via the search key parameter. Pretty big vulnerability. I don't actually know if it impacts Drupal. I'd have to dig into it to find a look. But this is pretty typical what I see when I first run this a lot of times with applications. Is nobody really does this, so nobody updates packages, so they always have a ton of security vulnerabilities. So that was the report it generates in the background. Oops. It's still. So I did it ahead of time. I was worried my wireless wouldn't be up for the task. Let me go ahead and quick monitor here. Switching inputs is always tricky on these things. Okay. So here are the different options we got that we had to do to make this work with PHP. Enable experimental parameters required. Again, this is Windows, by the way. There is obviously a Unix and Mac version. FYI, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about that. I don't have a Mac. Reasons that we don't need to get into. Enable experimental is required, as again, PHP is considered an experimental one. I usually use .l if I'm doing this locally or in Jenkins because it outputs a really verbose log file of what the scanner is actually doing and what it's not doing. You don't have to if you don't want to. Scan, you point to the directory where your composer lock file is. It's important. It actually goes on composer lock, not composer. Okay. And .out is where that HTML report is generated. You can also spit out like a JSON report, CSV. I mean, there's like 15 different type of reports you can generate. And more importantly, you can also set, there's a bunch of additional parameters. We can also set stuff like I mentioned, we can say, actually update that database you saw me download in the background, do that every 128 hours or every hour. We can say only fail and generate a bad exit code if the vulnerability is over a higher score than like a 7, which is usually considered a critical, that type of stuff. And there's also a Jenkins plugin, which is unfortunately for PHP not supported. However, if you do have Maven or .NET projects, then that's one of the things you support. I'll kind of skip most of this. But if you do have that, there is a nice Jenkins plugin that, again, under the hood, just uses OWASP Dependency Check and scans your report and actually integrates directly to Jenkins and spits out a cool little little tag, like a quality gate in your Jenkins job that shows you how many vulnerabilities it has. It has a vulnerability trend analysis. It's quite nice. I actually checked into it to see how hard it would be to add PHP support to it. Not terrible. I just didn't have time. With that said, it does work for if you're using a Java or .NET. So the first thing you're probably thinking is, well, that all sounds great, but like, is it really that big of a deal? So the first time I ran this is a real life screenshot of a big production site. and how many security, and by the way, a big vendor that that's another CMS, that charges 7 figures before you talk to them about how much before you're going to buy their CMS. And this is how many security vulnerabilities I've found in their package. Somewhere around like 30, I think, is how many CVEs are total there. Most of those were pretty easy to fix, right? It was just version bumps for very few breaking changes, but there were, and this is a Java project. And again, you saw that with the skin I just showed you guys. I just installed Drupal 8 flat out, and it's already picking up what it thinks are 3 critical. Again, you have to dig in the CVE. It's possible those don't really affect Drupal. Maybe they've mitigated it due to firewall rules or Nginx configuration or something like that. And this is really common. So after I started turning this on all the projects, we started reporting these vulnerabilities back to vendors and stuff like that. And now a lot of times vendors are trying to integrate this into their own pipelines, which fixes the problem for me. But yeah, every time I turn this on, I found a ton of vulnerabilities. And all these could be used, well, most of these could have been used to exploit customer, or DOS infrastructure. A lot of these are DOS attacks, honestly, which we'll get to. There's a score assigned to these vulnerabilities, a CVSS score. And like 1 to 3 is like might cause an issue, but probably not. Like a 4 to 7 is like almost always like a DDoS or a side channel attack. Like a 7 or higher is something like they can root your machine. So like something like WannaCry, something like that's like a 9 or a 10. That's like you're done. Remote execution can't touch anything. And some packages have 9s or 10s. JavaScript guys in the room, gals, anybody? Come on. So this does have support. The OWASP Dependency Check does have support for npm package.json. However, if you're using npm 6 or higher, Node themselves added support for basically this exact thing. If you run npm audit, it does pretty much this exact thing. It scans your package.json and package lock, reports against NIST, and spits out vulnerabilities. So I started turning this on all my projects as well, and using, just because it's built into npm, just using this instead of OWASP. But you can certainly use OWASP instead of npm. It's up to you. Yeah.
Does it suggest to you which versions to use? Or
yes.
Do you have to, okay.
Yeah,
So
it does. As a matter of fact, now be careful. If you probably can't see this. It actually spits out and tells you exactly how to fix it. So in this case, it's telling me there's a jQuery XSS vulnerability, which long story short doesn't affect us, but I can run npm update jQuery --depth to. It literally tells you how to fix it and exactly what it is. You have to be careful of that, of course, because sometimes there's major version bumps or you can break your app or whatever, but it absolutely will. And you can also configure npm audit to, again, fail on like a critical or low, or you can set its security levels and when you want it to blow up. Like usually I turn mine on so it doesn't fail the builds unless it's a low, above a medium, right?
does OWASP also tell you exactly? Okay, good.
Well,
Or
no, sorry. OWASP will link you out to the CVE. When you click on the CVE, it usually tells you like upgrade. It says like this package version below X, so you have to upgrade above whatever. Yeah, yeah. That's why I switch to npm audit. Npm audit like literally just command lines that just tell you. You can also do npm audit fix, which I wouldn't recommend, like in most cases, but that'll just it just upgrades all. It takes care of it. YOLO. Hope your app builds after it. So yeah, pretty cool. One thing I will say with npm audit, and I hate to complain about a free servers, I really do, but they've been having some server issues recently, because this talks back to their servers to like retrieve results, and it's been a little flaky in the last couple weeks. Supposedly have it fixed as of last week, but I had to fight a whole running battle the last couple weeks with npm audit breaking on builds for like during the mornings and fixing itself in the afternoons, and I'm going to tell people, I'm not going to shut it off, just calm down. Your dev build will be okay in like 2 hours. All right, so dependency checking. By far my favorite tool, well, one of my favorite OWASP tools. How many folks use SONARQUBE? Anybody? Okay. Everybody, do people know what SONARQUBE is? Okay, some nods, handful of nods. SONARQUBE is a static code analysis tool, right? It's free. Open source? Yeah, I think open source. It's designed to scan source code or compiled assets and just find common code problems. Now, oftentimes those are stuff like, hey, this variable shouldn't be declared this way. You're doing something stupid code-wise. But OWASP does also produce a set of SONARQUBE rules designed for security. So what these go ahead and do is they integrate into SONARQUBE natively. You just install a rule set. And what they do is you scan your code and look for problematic patterns. So like some of the stuff they do is pretty basic, right? It's like, do you have a variable that can in any way, shape, or form match a regex pattern that looks like password? If so, you're probably doing something wrong, right? You probably shouldn't be storing passwords in source code. It also does more complicated stuff like, are you using raw SQL in your command? If you are using raw SQL, are you parameterizing SQL that takes consumer input? So it does stuff like that as well. And again, it goes natively into SONARQUBE. So I usually set up SONARQUBE to run as part of my builds, right? Because I don't want developers checking in code that breaks just normal coding standards. And so it's pretty easy for me to then start throwing in SONARQUBE official OWASP rule sets in there as well. And there's templates for all the major languages. Everything from JavaScript, PHP, .NET, Python.
Would that be in addition to something like PHP code sniffer?
Yeah, yes.
Or in place of?
In addition to is probably, because and it's possible PHP code sniffer, I didn't look, and maybe someone could tell me, might already have some security rules built into it.
And it might not,
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I just wonder.
We typically end up using SONARQUBE honestly because it's free. Like some other tools are paid, right? And it's usually easier for us just to spin up a SONARQUBE server and integrate it because no one has to pay anything for it. A lot of my career has been around what tool does a customer not to pay money for? We'll use that tool. As Drupal folks, I think you all can sympathize with what I'm talking about. Anyway, there's and SONARQUBE itself, it does ship as well with some Python rules, or some PHP rules. This does add some more. So, like, this is an example of a SONARQUBE rule in action on a Jenkins server. Yep. So it failed this build. This is I'm sorry, this screen is terrible. This is a GitHub, right? So everybody's a GitHub PR. So I gate PRs on a lot of things, including SONARQUBE rule sets, as well as NPM dependency checks and all the rest. And it's saying, actually, SONARQUBE analysis reported 15 issues. One of them is critical. And the critical issue, although you can't read it, it's saying this HTTP client this person's trying to use isn't compatible with TLS 1.2. Right? So it does stuff like that. Like, which, I mean, a regular developer might have no freaking clue. Like, what you wouldn't necessarily know what TLS 2.1.2 is, but whatever HTTP client you're using in this code base isn't compatible with. You have to maybe use a new version or whatever, or a new package version. So this is kind of cool stuff it lets you do. So I mean, it's actually pretty easy to fix. And the rule sets as well, if you click on them, they'll link you out to like a website that has corrective action. Like, here's how to fix this, which is pretty nice. All right. One of my favorite ones. And it does it in line, which is also super nice, right? It's like literally right in your PR. It says, here's the line that's causing problem. There are also paid servers if you use GitHub that can do this as well, but again, free. All right, ZAP attack proxy. All right. So an attack proxy. Does anybody use something like Burp Suite? Has anybody heard of something like Burp Suite? There's some other ones as well. So there's a lot of paid tools that are scanning platforms. So all the stuff we talked about before requires access to your source code, right? NPM audits, check your package JSON. Dependency checks, check your composer. SONARQUBE is literally scanning your source code for rules. These type of tools they're hitting whatever public-facing website you have, and they're checking for vulnerabilities. Okay, so Burp Suite is a paid tool, but it costs thousands of dollars, and at least I think it's probably more than that now, and it's a little bit complicated to use. So what ZAP attack proxy does, it's OWASP version of that. Probably not as good, to be 100% honest with you, but it's free. I love it. So how it works. It scans your machine or like a configured website, I'll show you in just 1 second, for common vulnerabilities. Now this can be stuff as easy as, do you have HTTPS turned on? Do you have HTTPS, is it running the correct version? To your database is open and accepting admin as the credentials. To you're vulnerable to XSS, right? You're surprised how often that happens. Has a large customizable rule set as well as integration point with Jenkins, and best of all, it ships with pre-built Docker images, which I'll show you in 1 second. This is extremely easy to get running. As long as you have like Docker running somewhere, you can pretty much just do like. I'll show you in 1 second. So I'm just going to show you what this looks like for Docker real quick. Well, if we all can see it on this delightful monitor. All right, y'all can see my NASA background. Oh no, that's not gonna be okay. Well, whatever.
Increase the fonts.
You wish. This is command prompt.
You can't just command plus? Oh, you don't have a Mac.
No, I don't have a Mac. You know what? I feel like you're giving me crap about this. Hold on.
You know I love you, Bill.
I know. It's all right. Yes, you can. It's just we'll see how big I can make it. Make it okay.
The background.
Is that better?
And the text black.
Yeah, it's actually a good point. So Windows actually come out with a new command prompt, and nobody can.
Contrast.
Yeah, nobody is more excited about it than me. Screen text, let's go black, and screen background, let's go white. All right. How is that?
Yeah.
All right. I know the Windows.
You can't make it full screen though.
Unmaximize it.
Oh yeah. I don't. What is wrong with the internet these days? All right, that's better. Okay. Here is. Okay. So I am going to run this against VMLYR, which is a Drupal site. Okay. Let me drag that up so it's probably a little easier to see. So again, I mentioned they do publish official Docker images, right? So I'm using their official ZAP to Docker. That's your official Docker image. It ships with a bunch of pre-configured rule sets. In this case, I'm going to use their baseline rule set. I'll get into why these rule sets, you have to be careful with them in 1 second. Now I'm just going to point it to VMLYR. So, while that runs, I ran the scan right before I started doing its stuff. I ran the scan right before I came in here just in case my internet got flaky. You can see this is like what it reported it out. So cookie no HTTP only, cookie without secure flag, you can clear no cache control. It's just spitting out most of these are server admin type tasks, right? But it can find access. I don't think it did on ours. Let me just scroll down. OWASP ZAP to Docker. Like I said, it's included as well in the GitHub /buildinger/security. Yeah, anti-CRS tokens, X content hierarchy. Most of this stuff is low warning. Like there's nothing. Again, obviously, I should say obviously. Luckily enough, there's nothing on our site that's like security terrible, but there definitely can be. So I'll show you how to integrate this stuff. But this is like at its baseline, and you can see it's actually running in the background. Unfortunately, it's on my hotspot, so it's probably going to take a year and a half for it to finish. But we'll wait for it in a second, make sure nothing comes up. I also pointed to Drupal Flyover camp as well. Again, we're luckily only a handful of very minor warnings. Nothing particularly terrible, luckily. I always worried whenever I hit conference websites with that. I'm like, am I going to find something I don't want to find? Because, oh man. All right, so here, while that runs, here are a couple different options we got. Man, those slides look terrible. All right. There's a GUI. The GUI is awful. It's written in Java like swing. It just looks like something you saw in 2003. But whatever, it exists. There is a command line interface, which you just saw. There's also a REST API. Like if you have a whole security team, you're trying to use the REST API. Right? You can like spin up a machine, talk to it, send very advanced commands, etc., etc. And you can use that REST API for something else super cool. I'll show you in just 1 second. And there's a Jenkins plugin. So the Jenkins plugin has some pluses and minuses we'll get to in just a second. So first off, here's the great Java Swing GUI. Would never use this. I'm kidding. I have actually, and there's a Docker image for this as well. I have actually spun this up for people just to like, if I'm trying to play around and maybe drill into something. But for the most part, for continuous integration delivery, probably using a Swing GUI, right? But it does exist if for some reason you need to provide ZAP to somebody. There is also an official Jenkins plugin. It has integration with Jira. The only real downside to it is it requires a full installation of everything on your Jenkins server. And so ZAP is a real CPU hog. When it runs, it'll spike, like even on, this is a Core i7, it's going to spike 1 or 2 of those CPUs 100% while it runs. So on a Jenkins server, that might or might not be something you want to do. Usually that's why I tend to run this thing isolated in a Docker container somewhere, so I don't have to worry, I can throw it off on some other infrastructure from a Jenkins server. But if you have Jenkins hardware for it and it's not a bigger concern, this plugin is pretty sweet. Like how it works, your Jenkins job talks to PROXY, it hits the the internet, or it could be like an internal server, right? Runs it against it, spits back the report inside the Jenkins job directly. It'll automatically create Jira issues, or it'll just create a Jira issue with a report attached to it. Like it's got some pretty cool integrations. So there's some pluses and minuses with it. Configure it's pretty easy. Again, it just requires that. It just requires that you have to have the OWASP ZAP server on the same server, like all the necessary bits. You can't just like Docker run this thing. This requires some installation steps on your Jenkins server, or again another slave maybe set up as a Jenkins slave. But other than that, it's extremely easy to run. There's a ZAP CLI which I just saw. I might end up doing something here. Let me just duplicate my monitor, because I just keep getting annoyed by the text getting cut off. There we go. Now we can actually see the text. All right. There's a couple different, again, it ships with the Docker container ships with a couple different pre-configured stuff. A quick scan, extremely fast. This is something I'll usually turn on quick and baseline for like dev boxes, right? Because it does real quick scan. It doesn't kill the box. It just finds glaring performance and glaring security holes, like nobody turn on SSL. Then there's the active scan. Be careful with active scan. Active scan can be considered violating federal law or laws of other countries, because it also will usually destroy whatever box you're hitting, because it attempts DDoS attacks, it attacks a whole lot of stuff. So active scan is something I'll usually do. Maybe we're checking a release build, right? So like the night of the release build or something like that, we'll push this off and then run this off. Or it's a scheduled thing that runs, once a week or something like that, just because of its problematic implementation. With that said, again, quick scan is very basic, right? It just runs. The more likely you are to find stuff. Like an active scan will spider literally your entire sitemap and ignore the sitemap and spider every single link off your site in the same domain. It'll go through everything and try to find stuff. It'll also scan the IP range, the entire Class C IP range of your server. It really does hit the world, which is again why you have to be careful with this. Only run active scan on hardware you own or have permission to touch, because again, theoretically you could go to jail for it. I would not recommend going to jail for it. Just throw that out there. There's a ZAP API. Again, this is really for if you have a security team. The other thing I've seen this for is, and we'll get to it in a second, is how many folks are familiar with Swagger? Open API specification, I guess is what it's typically called nowadays. So there's a cool Swagger plugin for this I can show you in a second, that you feed it your Swagger docs, and it runs the ZAP scanner against your Swagger docs. And does your Swagger doc require authentication, or is it ignoring it, right? Designed to protect you against stuff like that. Or does your endpoints, does it say only accept get in a post, but you're accepting option, or whatever. It just checks your entire documentation and ensures correctness for security rules. Pretty cool. So some tips on this from running this in real life on real customer stuff. I usually run this as the last stage of a pipeline. So because it actually hits a web server, right? So it requires the code you already did to be in production. So my last step is usually in a build. We'll be running this. Okay. Or you can, if that doesn't work, maybe even the quick scan takes a while. It can on certain low hardware. If your site is really big, run as a scheduled task, right? Do it every day at 7 p.m. or whatever works out for you. And big thing to keep in mind again is it uses lots of resources. It'll easily destroy whatever machine you are hitting and whatever machine you are running it from. So you have to be a little bit careful. I think it finally finished on this one. Let me see. A little bit careful. Yeah, so it finished. Again, didn't find anything terrible. Yeah, so and we're using Encapsula, some stuff. And it's, again, this is kind of the result of the report. So now you can also set up how this will fail your site. This isn't going to fail because it didn't find anything critical. Part of the baseline parameters you pass the Docker image, there are parameters you can set, actually fail if you find any warnings whatsoever. But the baseline, which I ran there, as you saw, even on my laptop on my hotspot, took just a couple minutes. So it's pretty easy to integrate. Again, infrastructure options. So if you don't want to use a Jenkins plugin, which I don't usually do, I typically either spin up another container and just run this guy, because again, they ship official container images, so why not just use the containers on whatever Kubernetes farm or just a Docker cluster, whatever I got happening. You can also, I've done this before, if you're shipping containers to production, you can just, as one of your build steps, just add this to the container. Just run the, as part of the build process. When you build a container, install this as part of your Docker file. Build it, run it. Or you can run it in Jenkins. Again, usually I do separate containers. It's rare I want the overhead of adding all this to a container that's being actually used in production, but sometimes it works. How much time? I got 10 minutes. Okay, Open Web Testing Framework. So this is an active pen testers framework. So again, dependency check's pretty easy to integrate into your CI/CD pipeline. The ZAP scanner, again, pretty easy to integrate into dependency pipeline. This is designed to implement as something you provide to a tester. So the open testing framework is an official framework that you give to a security professional, and they can pre-configure it and build their own rule sets. And then from those rule sets, you can run automated scans. It's also designed as a standalone framework. Like if somebody's fuzzing your site, it's like, hey, I'm great. You should know all this documentation, great automated scans, it's fine. Now let me see if I can break whatever you think you're doing. So here is what it looks like. I'm going to show you here. So I'm just going to hit, again, VML because I don't want legal implementations. So this is the, again, an online implementation of it, but there is a Docker image you can integrate into your thing. This is just running their passive scanner, so somebody hasn't configured it yet. So it took a few seconds. These are all the different things it scanned for. These are all the rule sets that it ran. Didn't find anything, thank goodness. Testing your CSRFs, suggested bug, fixation, cookies, attributes, etc., etc. So the whole idea behind this particular thing is, again, this ships the Docker image. You could run these scans, which are a little bit more intense than even the OWASP ZAP attack proxy, or your security person, if you have on a team, or you yourself, could build your own rule sets to run. And you integrate as another step. After ZAP ran, maybe this could run. Or, and I've done this once before too, is maybe just as part of your Jenkins job, it just spins up one of these Docker containers in your environment or something like that, and somebody just logs into it to hit your site. You just, as part of your pipe, you're just spinning up an environment for your testers to look at. Web testing environments, a little bit different. So these are images, like Red Hat, I think CentOS is a good phrase, and Windows and other stuff. But they're pre-built just VMs with a whole bunch of hacker tools, a whole bunch of security tools built onto them. Everything from Nmap to OWTF is built into them. There's Debian VMware VirtualBox. These are basically things you provide to a security person to log into, to hit and try to kill your servers through whatever means possible. The usual use case for this in your CI/CD pipeline is oftentimes your production environments are extremely locked down, right? Or your stage environments are locked down, and it's a pain to continually set up VMs for somebody to get to. So we've used these once before, or twice before, I guess now, where as part of the build pipeline, I will automatically ship one of these environments out, give it a random set of passwords and the access it needs, because when I build environments, I'm building databases and all the rest. And then it's like, here you go, security person, here's your SSH key in case I can log on this box, hit the environment, here's the tools you need, and then you can destroy it when you're done. Instead of the other use case being, otherwise your security guy needs access to your entire environment at all times, which can be problematic, right? The cool thing about using these web testing environments, you just spin one of these containers or environments, VMs itself as part of your pipeline, or make a separate Jenkins pipeline. They can hit it, you can destroy it, they're done, and you don't get rid of their access right away. I'll also use this for if you have to do like federal audits or security audits and that type of stuff. So the like government and security auditors will ask for this type of stuff as well. It's easy to be like, okay, cool, I'll spin you up this box, hit it, here's access to it. When you're done, I can destroy it. Yeah, it's automated. It also has Docker images as well. So the other thing as well is maybe you just want, like you're a security guy, and somebody's like, hey, I just want to run these Nmap commands against my infrastructure as code, right? I'm building out VMs. My DevOps team is building out, or I am building out environments, and I'm supposed to verify once they're done that only these 3 ports are available, right? So you can also, since these images, both Docker images and the virtual machine, ship up stuff like Nmap installed, and they have a bunch of pre-built like parameter pass-throughs. You'd be like, cool, after I build my new containers, run this Docker command and verify that the Nmap only have these 3 ports open. All right. Last, and I want to say most boring, but one of the most important, application security verification standards. This is a whole lot of text. Has anybody ever had to do a PCI audit by chance? Okay. So PCI credit card, if you have to do credit cards. If you were to do one of those, you're going to do like the highest ones where you're actually taking raw credit cards, processing or storing them. This will remind you a lot of those audits. So what this is a couple 100-page handbook of here are the exact security rules you should at all times follow to keep your infrastructure and stuff safe. Now, that sounds super boring, and it legitimately is. However, where this applies to us in DevOps, there's been a lot of talk recently, and I found this to be universally true. Most people, their Jenkins box, or whatever CI/CD box they're using, basically has the keys to the kingdom, right? It can usually do anything it wants to any environment at any time. And it's extremely rare I find those boxes very well secured, if secured at all. Like, it's a good thing if admin doesn't work half the time when I log on to them, right? Or it's a good version if they've run patches in the last year, or are not, if somebody has bothered updating Jenkins in the last 3 years. So I put this on here for a very specific reason, because whenever we do, and I make these security audits, even do federal audits the same. They was checking infrastructure. Now whoever checks like the deployment infrastructure, and we probably should. I'm going to guess at some point somebody's going to make a real good attack against Jenkins and figure out how to do this. So if you have a Jenkins box, I would highly encourage you. Again, the rules are hundreds of pages long, but they're also categorized by like level 1, level 2, level 3, where level 3 being like, this is probably storing everybody's medical record, social security number, credit card number, bank account number, all in one file. That's the type of system you should run the level 3 rules against. Or you're a telecom and everybody's communication across the entire United States goes to your data center. That's probably not needed. But for level 1 and level 2, I would encourage you to take a look at this documentation and at least see how it applies to your Jenkins stuff. I mean, a lot of it's pretty easy, right? It's like, are you enforcing password expirations? Are you enforcing strong passwords? Are your patches being run? Did you turn off these things? Is Jenkins running as root? How many people have Jenkins running as root? Anybody? All right. Not that I would do that. Yeah, here's an example. Right, you see here, it's just like level 1, level 2, 3, like, to verify all authentication controls are enforced on the server side. Remember how to change your password functionality, doesn't let you include change it with the old password, et cetera, et cetera. But these are vetted, these are given out. They're legitimately pretty good. So, again, remember, if your CI/CD pipeline is ever compromised, rest in peace your month, because you're going to have to rebuild everything, because it had access to everything. You've lost control of your entire app stack, and possibly source control, right? Because it's usually not just the deployed stuff, but the other stuff you have in source control. They've compromised everything. It's never happened to me yet, but at some point. So please go forth and build some rugged software, everybody. Here's some resources. As well, again, the slides are available on github.com/buildinger/security. But there's some OWASP links as well. As mentioned, the Swagger definitions. Here's a good example of how to integrate the ZAP attack scanner with Swagger definitions inside your CI/CD pipeline, which is honestly really, really awesome when you get working. Like it's so nice because it's immediately obvious that somebody forgot to do something. Again, Docker and OWASP setup, dependency check, goes on and on. And I'm going to go flip back to the second. But thanks, everybody. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to go back to the very first slide so y'all can take a snapshot of the...
How do we get to the slides?
Right there, sorry. github.com/buildinger/continuous security.
I just... We need this on
You should just put up a PDF link. Yeah. Well,
Is it on here?
Yeah, scroll drop. So, right there. That's a PDF. So, I'm sorry.
Click on that.
Yeah. You just got to download that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I should make that more obvious. But thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful Saturday.